The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying the first group of alien recruits selected for the historic military exchange program. Inside the vessel, recruit Threx adjusted his breathing apparatus for the third time. The insectoid warrior from the Chitran hives had trained for cycles to earn this position. His species had a proud military tradition spanning thousands of years. He expected to teach these primitive humans a thing or two about proper warfare. Beside him, recruit Nima floated in her mobile water tank, her translucent body pulsing with excited colors. The telepathic being from the aqueous depths had studied human culture extensively. She found them fascinating in their simplicity. They had only joined the Galactic Federation 3 standard years ago, yet they insisted on hosting military training. How quaint. Observer Velk stood motionless near the viewport, his crystalline form refracting the light of Earth's sun into rainbow patterns across the walls. His assignment was clear. Document everything. Assess whether humans were ready to contribute to Federation military operations. Write a comprehensive report for the Council. He had observed 47 species during their integration period. Humans would be no different. The ship landed at a facility in the southern region of a peninsula. The area was designated as the primary training center for human military forces in this nation. As the loading ramp descended, Velk's sensors immediately registered an anomaly. The gravity reading was incorrect. He recalibrated his instruments. The reading remained the same. This world pulled at him with nearly double the force he considered normal. A human stood at the base of the ramp, wearing a crisp uniform with various colored ribbons across his chest. His face bore several scars and his posture radiated calm authority. This was Corporal Tae-sung, their primary instructor for the program. "Welcome to Earth," Tae-sung said, his voice warm and friendly. "I hope your journey was comfortable. We're honored to host you for the next 12 weeks. Threx descended first, his 6 legs managing the ramp with difficulty. Each step felt like he was carrying extra weight. Was this normal? He would never admit weakness, so he said nothing. Nima's tank floated down smoothly, guided by anti-gravity generators. Felk followed, his crystalline structure creaking slightly under the unexpected pressure. "The air here is a bit thin," Tae-sung continued as he led them toward the main building. "We're at about 1,200 meters elevation. You'll adjust after a few days. Thin air?" Velk's sensors showed oxygen content at acceptable levels. What did the human mean? Then understanding struck him. Humans considered this atmospheric pressure normal. They lived and trained in conditions that would require supplemental oxygen on most civilized worlds. The barracks were simple but functional. Human recruits were already present, organizing their sleeping areas with efficient movements. One of them, a young female named Hye-won, approached the group with a bright smile. "Hey, you must be the exchange recruits. I'm Hye-won. We're going to be training together." "This is so exciting!" Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, though Velk noted her grip strength when she shook his crystalline appendage. She could have easily crushed the delicate structure but controlled her pressure with precise care. Another human recruit, Hyun-woo, helped Threx navigate to his assigned area. "Don't worry about keeping up at first," he said cheerfully. "Basic training is pretty easy once you get used to it. We'll help you guys out, easy?" Threx had already noticed the human recruits moving with a casualness that defied the heavy gravity. They walked, jumped, and gestured as if the weight meant nothing. His own species required rest periods after extended activity in anything above standard gravity. These beings lived in it. That evening, Instructor Daeho gathered everyone in the assembly hall. He was an older human with gray hair and a weathered face. He explained the training schedule with patient detail. Physical conditioning would begin at 0500 hours each morning. Combat training in the afternoon. Tactical studies in the evening. Standard procedure, he assured them. "We understand you come from different worlds with different capabilities," Daeho said. "We'll work with each of you individually. The goal isn't to make you human. It's to help you understand how we train our forces. Take what works for you back to your own units." Velk appreciated the diplomatic language. Threx felt slightly insulted by the implication they needed special accommodation. Nima simply observed, her telepathic senses picking up the ambient emotions in the room. The humans felt excited, curious, and protective. They saw the aliens as guests to be helped, not competitors to be defeated. As the alien recruits settled into their sleeping areas that first night, None of them could have imagined what awaited them. They thought they understood what military training meant. They believed their own experiences had prepared them for this exchange. They were wrong. The humans were about to show them what it meant to evolve on a death world, and they would do it with smiles, encouragement, and a complete lack of awareness that what they considered basic was about to shatter every assumption the galaxy held about warfare, strength, and survival. The alarm sounded at precisely 0500 hours, a harsh electronic tone that pierced through the barracks and jolted Threx from his rest cycle. Around him, human recruits were already moving. They rose from their beds with practiced ease. No groaning, no complaints, just immediate action. Hei-Wan was already dressed and tying her boots. Hyun-Woo stretched his arms above his head with a yawn and smiled at the morning. Threx struggled to lift himself from his sleeping platform. The gravity seemed worse after rest. His exoskeleton felt heavy, his limbs sluggish. Nima's tank pulsed with distressed colors. Her species typically required a 2-hour waking period to achieve full cognitive function. The humans expected them ready in minutes. "Come on, everyone outside," called Instructor Daeho from the doorway. His voice was cheerful, energetic.
"A beautiful morning for a run? A run?"
Felk's translator must have malfunctioned. Surely they would not engage in sustained locomotion at this hour. His species did not run. They moved with deliberate, energy-efficient steps. Running was what prey animals did when fleeing predators. Outside, the air was cold. The sun had not yet risen fully above the horizon. 40 human recruits stood in neat formations, bouncing slightly on their feet, shaking their limbs loose. They looked eager. Private Ji-Woo jogged in place, her breath creating small clouds in the morning air. "Standard morning warm-up," Daeho announced. 5 kilometers, easy pace. "We have guests today, so we'll keep it light." 5 kilometers. Easy pace. Light. The words echoed in Velk's consciousness as he processed their meaning. They were going to run 5,000 meters as a warm-up exercise. Before the actual training began, Tae-sung appeared beside the alien recruits. "Don't worry about keeping up," he said kindly. "Just do what you can. Stop if you need to." "This is your first day," the group started moving. The humans fell into an easy rhythm, their feet striking the ground in synchronized patterns. They talked to each other as they ran, actually held conversations while engaging in sustained physical exertion. Hei-Wan discussed her plans for the weekend with another recruit. Hyun-Woo debated which meal option was better at the dining facility. Threx lasted 400 meters. His breathing apparatus could not cycle oxygen fast enough. His legs burned with the effort of moving his body through this oppressive gravity, while maintaining speed. He slowed to a walk, then stopped completely, mandibles clicking in frustration. Nima's tank had anti-gravity generators, but even guiding it along the path required concentration. The neural interface that controlled the tank's movement was designed for calm, meditative operation. Not this chaotic, rapid-paced activity. She fell behind within the first kilometer. Velk pushed himself to continue, his crystalline structure heating from the friction and effort. He made it 2 kilometers before his systems demanded a rest cycle to prevent structural damage. The humans completed all 5 kilometers in approximately 30 minutes. They were breathing slightly harder when they returned, but they were not exhausted. They were not injured. They were not requiring medical intervention. They gathered in formation again, still bouncing on their feet, still ready for more. "Good warm-up," Daeho said. "Now let's do some basic calisthenics." He demonstrated the first exercise. He lowered his body to the ground, supporting his weight on his hands and feet, then pushed himself back up. Down and up. Down and up. He did this 20 times without stopping. "Push-ups," he explained. "Standard exercise. Everyone give me 20. The human recruits dropped to the ground and began. Their bodies moved like well-designed machines. Up and down, muscles flexing under their skin, supporting their entire body weight against the crushing gravity. Ji-Woo completed her 20 and immediately did 10 more, just because she could. Threx attempted 1 push-up. His arms trembled. His exoskeleton scraped against the ground. He managed to lower himself but lacked the strength to push back up. He remained there, stuck, until Tae-sung gently helped him to his feet. "It's okay," the instructor said. "This takes practice. You'll build up to it. Build up to it." Threx was a warrior of the Chitran hives. He had trained since hatching for combat. He could not perform a single repetition of what humans considered a basic exercise. The calisthenics continued. Pull-ups, where humans hung from a bar and lifted their entire body weight using only their arms. Sit-ups, where they anchored their feet and repeatedly lifted their torso against gravity. Squats, where they lowered and raised their body over and over. Each exercise would require mechanical assistance for most Federation species. The humans did them with their bodies alone. Private Dong Hyun, one of the smaller human males, completed his set of pull-ups and dropped from the bar with a grin. "That was a good burn," he said to his companion. Fel quickly checked his translator. "Burn?" The human was referring to the sensation of muscular fatigue as if it were positive, as if pain was something desirable. After calisthenics came the meal period. The human recruits filed into the dining facility and loaded their plates with enormous quantities of food. Proteins, carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables. They consumed calories at a rate that seemed excessive. Haewon explained that the average human required approximately 2,000 calories per day for basic function, more during heavy training. 2,000 calories. Velk required 400. Nima required 250. Threx, despite his larger size, required 600. Humans burned energy like fusion reactors, and they needed to constantly refuel. During the meal, Corporal Yejin, the unit medic, approached the alien recruits with a friendly smile. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Any injuries, any concerns?" Threx admitted his respiratory difficulty during the run. Yejin nodded understandingly and made notes on her datapad. "We'll get you supplemental oxygen for the next few sessions," she said. "You'll adapt eventually. The human body is incredibly adaptable. I assume yours is too, just needs time." The human body is incredibly adaptable. The statement was so casual, so matter-of-fact. Yejin had no idea she had just described something extraordinary. Most species had narrow environmental tolerances. They adapted slowly over generations, not during a training cycle. As the first morning drew to a close, the alien recruits gathered in their designated rest area. They were exhausted. They were sore. They were questioning every decision that had led them to this planet. The humans were outside playing a recreational game with a ball, laughing and shouting, burning even more energy because they found it fun. Belk began writing his first daily report. His appendages trembled slightly as he input the data. This was only day 1. They had 83 more days of training ahead of them. Week 2 began with an announcement that filled the alien recruits with a sense of dread they had learned to recognize. Sergeant Bora stood before the assembled group with her characteristic enthusiasm and declared it was time to introduce them to the obstacle course. "This is standard for all our recruits," she explained, gesturing toward the sprawling complex of wooden structures, ropes, walls, and muddy pits that stretched across the training field. "It builds strength, endurance, and mental toughness. Don't worry, we'll walk you through each obstacle first." Threx had spent the past week adapting to human physical training. With supplemental oxygen and carefully managed rest periods, he could now complete half the morning run without stopping. He had managed 3 push-ups yesterday. He felt proud of his progress. Then he saw the obstacle course and realized how little he actually understood. The first obstacle was a wall. Just a wooden wall 3 meters high, perfectly vertical. No handholds, no ladder, no assistance. Sergeant Bora approached it at a run, planted one foot against the surface, pushed upward, grabbed the top edge, and pulled herself over in one smooth motion. She landed on the other side and jogged back around. "Your turn," she said with an encouraging smile. Hyunwoo went next, scaling the wall with ease. Then Haewon, then Jiwoo, then Donghyun. Every human recruit approached the obstacle with confidence and overcame it through sheer physical power. They lifted their body weight against gravity using only their arm strength. They did this casually, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Threx approached the wall. He managed to climb halfway using his multiple limbs before his strength gave out. He hung there for a moment, then dropped back to the ground. Taesung appeared beside him with a rope ladder. "Use this for now," he said. "You'll work up to doing it unassisted." The second obstacle was a crawl pit, a long stretch of mud covered by a net of barbed wire, positioned low enough that participants had to flatten themselves completely to pass underneath. The humans dropped to their stomachs and began pulling themselves forward using their elbows and knees, their bodies scraping through cold mud while metal barbs waited inches above their backs. Nima's tank could not fit under the wire. She had to be guided around the obstacle entirely. Felk attempted the crawl, but his crystalline structure caught on every irregularity in the ground. His surface, designed for clean, controlled environments, was now coated in mud and scratched by rocks. The humans emerged from the other end filthy and grinning. "That's the fun part," Private Kyung-soo said, wiping mud from his face. Get your blood pumping. Obstacle 3 involved a series of ropes stretched across a water pit. Participants had to swing from rope to rope, releasing one to catch the next, never touching the water below. It required grip strength, timing, and a complete disregard for the possibility of falling. Ji-woo demonstrated, her smaller frame swinging across the gap with practiced ease. The trick is momentum, she called back. Don't hesitate between ropes, don't hesitate. Easy advice for a species that treated falling from heights as a minor inconvenience. Threx knew that a fall from this height into water would crack his exoskeleton. The humans wore no protective equipment. They relied entirely on their grip strength and trusted their bodies to endure failure. Velk watched Dong-hyun cross the rope obstacle. Halfway across, his hand slipped. He fell plunging into the water with a splash. He surfaced immediately, laughed, and swam to the edge. Almost had it, he said cheerfully, preparing to try again. Almost had it. He had fallen from a dangerous height into cold water and was treating it as a minor setback. Velk's report notes were becoming increasingly concerned. Either humans could not perceive danger correctly, or they had such robust bodies that what appeared dangerous to other species was merely inconvenient to them. The course continued. A cargo net to climb requiring more arm strength. A balance beam narrow and high that humans crossed with barely a wobble. A set of horizontal bars where participants swung from one to the next, supporting their full weight with each hand alternately. Walls to jump between, platforms to leap toward, obstacles that required throwing the body through space with faith that strength and coordination would prevent injury. Private Sumin completed the entire course in under 8 minutes. She was not even breathing particularly hard when she finished. That was a good run, she said, checking her time on the board. Better than last week. Sergeant Bora gathered the group at the end of the course. This is your baseline, she explained. We'll run this course twice a week. You'll see your improvements over time. The record for this course is 4 minutes and 37 seconds, set by a recruit 3 classes ago. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Velk calculated what that meant. That human had moved through every obstacle, covering over half a kilometer of complex terrain, requiring dozens of acts of strength and coordination, in less time than most species needed to walk the same distance on flat ground. Now, Bora continued, I know this seems challenging right now, but let me show you the advanced course we use for special operations training. She led them to an adjacent field. The obstacles there were higher, longer, more complex. Velk saw structures that would require climbing equipment and safety harnesses under normal circumstances. Bora explained that Special Forces candidates completed that course while carrying additional weight, and often after sleep deprivation. We won't make you do that one, she said with a laugh. That's for the really intense training. Really intense. As if the standard course was not intense. As if requiring recruits to climb, crawl, swing, balance, and jump through mud and obstacles was casual. Observer Velk felt his understanding of Federation military standards crumbling. He had visited the elite training facilities of the Chitran hives. He had observed the warrior conditioning programs of the Armored Dominion. None of them approached this level of physical demand. That evening, as the human recruits cleaned their equipment and prepared for the next day, Threx approached Taesung with a question that had been troubling him. Instructor, why do you train like this? Why make it so difficult? Taesung considered the question carefully. Because warfare is difficult, he said finally. Because when you're in real combat, tired, scared, injured, you need to know your body will keep functioning. We push ourselves in training so that nothing in the field surprises us. We make it hard here so it's easier out there. So it's easier out there. The humans intentionally created suffering during training to prepare for worse suffering in combat. They hurt themselves on purpose to build tolerance for pain. They exhausted themselves repeatedly to expand their endurance. What kind of world created beings that thought this way? What kind of evolutionary pressure produced creatures that sought out hardship as preparation for survival? Threx returned to his rest area with new understanding forming in his mind. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. He had read the designation without truly comprehending it. Now he was beginning to understand. This planet had tried to kill humans for millions of years, and humans had responded by becoming unkillable. The hand-to-hand combat training began in week 4. Instructor Taesung stood in the center of the practice mat, wearing protective padding and a calm expression. Around him, human recruits stretched and prepared their bodies for the session. The alien observers watched from a safe distance, as they had been doing for most physical activities. Combat training is essential, Taesung explained, not because we want to fight, but because we need to know how if circumstances require it. Today we'll cover basic defensive techniques. Defensive techniques. Velk noted the terminology. Humans framed their violence instruction as protection, though the distinction seemed minimal when observing the actual practice. Taesung called Donghyun to the mat to demonstrate. The young recruit approached, and Taesung showed the group how to redirect an incoming strike, how to use an opponent's momentum against them, how to break free from various holds. The movements were precise, controlled, and clearly practiced thousands of times. Then Taesung asked Donghyun to attack him at full speed. What happened next occurred too quickly for most of the observers to follow. Donghyun moved forward with sudden acceleration. Taesung shifted his weight, redirected the motion, and Donghyun was suddenly airborne. He flipped through space and landed hard on his back on the mat. The impact would have broken bones in most species. Donghyun lay still for a moment. Nima's colors flashed with distress. Then the young human sat up, laughed, and accepted Taesung's offered hand to pull him back to his feet. "Good fall," Taesung said. "You remembered to tuck your chin. Good fall." The human had been thrown through the air and slammed into the ground, and the praise was for how well he had been thrown. Velk added another note to his growing file of human peculiarities. "Your turn to practice," Taesung announced. "Pair up and run through the defensive sequence slowly. Remember, control and technique matter more than strength." The human recruits paired off and began practicing. Haewon worked with Jiwoo, each taking turns executing throws and falls. Their movements were careful, measured, designed not to actually injure their partner. But Velk could see the potential violence in every technique. These were not theoretical exercises. These were practical methods for destroying an opponent's ability to fight. Private Kyung-soo approached Threx carefully. "Want to try?" he asked. "I'll go super slow, I promise." Threx agreed, curious despite his apprehension. Kyung-soo demonstrated a basic wrist release, showing how to rotate against the thumb to break a grip. His movements were gentle, his grip light, yet Threx could feel the power behind the technique. This human was holding back significantly, reducing his natural strength to avoid hurting his alien partner. During a water break, Instructor Minjai gathered the group for a lecture on human physiology and combat advantages. He activated a holographic display showing human anatomical structure. "Humans are persistence hunters," Minjai explained. "Our ancestors tracked prey across enormous distances, following for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to run long distances, regulate our temperature through sweating, and maintain pursuit regardless of conditions." The image showed a human skeleton, then overlaid the muscular system, then the cardiovascular system. Minjai continued, "Notice our eyes, forward-facing binocular vision. This is typical of predator species. We sacrifice peripheral vision for depth perception and the ability to track moving targets precisely. Forward-facing eyes, predator configuration." Threx felt something cold settle into his core. He had been living among predators for 4 weeks, training alongside creatures designed by evolution to hunt, chase, and kill, and they were friendly. They smiled, they helped, they showed patience with his limitations. How could predators be so kind? "Our reaction time is optimized for tracking and intercepting prey," Minjai went on. "When a human sees movement, we can process and respond in approximately 150 to 200 milliseconds. Our hands are designed for precision gripping, allowing us to use tools and weapons with great accuracy." Velk's crystalline structure processed this information. 150 milliseconds. Most Federation species operated at 3 to 400 milliseconds. Humans could perceive and react to threats twice as fast. The lecture continued with more revelations. Humans possessed redundant organ systems. 2 kidneys when they only needed 1. 2 lungs that could function independently. A liver that could regenerate lost mass. They could survive the loss of significant blood volume. Could function with broken bones. Could continue operating with injuries that would incapacitate most beings. Pain tolerance is another factor, Minjai said. Humans can override pain signals through mental discipline and adrenaline response. This allows continued function during injury. Private Sumin raised her hand. "Like when I finished that marathon with a stress fracture in my foot?" "Exactly," Minjai confirmed. "That's an example of human endurance and pain management. Marathon. Stress fracture. Finished anyway. Velk was running out of space in his notes to properly document these revelations. The sparring session resumed after the lecture. The human recruits now practiced more advanced techniques, executing throws and counter-throws with increasing speed. Hyunwoo caught an incoming punch, redirected it, and smoothly transitioned into a joint lock that would have dislocated most Federation species' manipulator limbs. His partner tapped the mat twice, signaling submission, and both fighters reset to starting position with friendly grins. They were practicing how to break each other, and they enjoyed it. Corporal Ye-jin, the medic, supervised the session with a medical kit nearby. Halfway through, Dong-hyun caught an accidental elbow to his face during a defensive drill. His nose bled, a bright red stream that would have required immediate medical intervention for most species. Ye-jin approached, checked the injury, handed him a cloth, and determined it was not serious. Dong-hyun held the cloth to his nose, waited for the bleeding to slow, then continued training. Continued training, with a bleeding injury to his face, because it was not serious. Nima broadcast a pulse of telepathic distress that the nearby humans could not perceive but every alien observer felt. She was watching beings who considered facial injuries minor inconveniences, who practiced violence against their own kind for education, who moved with predator speed and predator precision while maintaining prey species social bonds. That evening, Threx accessed the Galactic Library's files on Earth history. He needed to understand how humans had developed this way. What he found disturbed him more than the training had. Humans had been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history. Thousands of conflicts, millions of casualties, entire civilizations rising and falling through violence. They had developed weapons specifically to kill other humans more efficiently. They had created elaborate strategies and tactics refined over millennia of practice. The most recent major conflict had ended only 80 years ago, within living memory. Humans who had fought in those wars were still alive, still training the next generation. Earth had not just created predators. It had created predators who spent millions of years practicing on each other. Threx closed the files and sat in the darkness of his quarters. The humans thought this training was basic. They considered it gentle, appropriate for beginners. They had no idea that what they called foundational would qualify as elite special forces training on most worlds. Tomorrow, Tae-sung had mentioned, they would practice knife-fighting techniques. Actual bladed weapons in the hands of predator-evolved beings who could react in under 200 milliseconds. Threx wondered if he would survive the remaining weeks. He also wondered what the galaxy had truly welcomed into the Federation, and whether anyone had really understood what they were doing. Week 6 brought the announcement of the field exercise. Commander Sang-woo addressed the assembled recruits with his typical military efficiency. 48 hours in the wilderness. Navigate to designated checkpoints, complete objectives, survive on provided rations, return to base. This is standard field training, he explained. You'll work in mixed squads. Human and alien recruits together, support each other, learn from each other. Weather forecast shows temperatures between 5 and 15 degrees Celsius with possible rain. Pack accordingly, 5 to 15 degrees. Velk's translator processed the temperature range. That was cold, approaching the lower limits of comfortable operation for most species. Humans discussed it as if it were pleasant weather. Corporal Tae-sung organized the squads. His group included Haewon, Kyungsoo, Threx, Nima, and Velk. They gathered their equipment from the supply depot. The humans loaded massive packs onto their backs, weight that would require anti-gravity assistance for most Federation species. They adjusted straps, tested the balance, and lifted the loads as if they weighed nothing. Tae-sung handed Threx a smaller pack, modified for his body structure. This is about 30% of what we carry, he said kindly. Let me know if it's too heavy. 30%. The pack still felt oppressive. Threx secured it to his body and tried to move naturally. The humans had loaded their packs with approximately 25 kilograms of equipment each. They would carry this weight for 48 hours across rough terrain. The squads departed at dawn. The human recruits set a moderate pace, something they called a patrol walk. To Velk, it felt fast. His crystalline structure heated from the sustained movement. The pack pulled at his center of gravity. The terrain was uneven, covered in vegetation and rocks that required constant attention to navigate. The humans chatted as they walked. Haewon told stories about her childhood. Kyung-soo debated the best strategy for their first checkpoint objective. They made it seem effortless. 4 hours into the march, Tae-sung called for a rest break. 10 minutes. The humans shrugged off their packs, drank water, ate compact energy bars, and checked their equipment. Threx collapsed his limbs gratefully. His breathing apparatus struggled with the sustained exertion. Nima's tank had developed a concerning vibration in one of the anti-gravity generators. "How are you holding up?" Hae-won asked, crouching beside Threx. Her voice carried genuine concern. "Managing," Threx replied, unwilling to admit weakness. "The first field exercise is always rough," she said. "I remember mine. Thought I was going to die halfway through the first day, but you push through and you realize you're stronger than you thought." Stronger than you thought. Easy words from someone whose biology was designed for this exact activity. Hae-won had probably never experienced real physical limitation in her life. The march continued. The temperature dropped as clouds moved in. The humans pulled jackets from their packs and continued without complaint. Rain began falling, light at first, then heavier. The humans accepted it with the same casual attitude they showed toward everything. Just weather, just water falling from the sky. Threx's exoskeleton handled moisture poorly. Water seeped into joints, affecting his movement. Tae-sung produced a waterproof covering from his pack and helped Threx wrap his most vulnerable areas. "Should have mentioned it might rain," the instructor said apologetically. "We're so used to it we forget it bothers other species. So used to it." On most civilized worlds, citizens would seek shelter during precipitation. Humans just walked through it. The first checkpoint required the squad to navigate using only a map and compass, no electronic assistance. The humans studied the terrain, compared it to the map markings, and determined the route with practiced efficiency. Kyung-soo took point, reading the landscape like it was a clear language. Hills, valleys, water sources, vegetation patterns, all provided information that guided their path. They reached the checkpoint before dark. The objective there involved assembling a shelter and preparing a defensive position. The humans worked with coordinated precision, assigning tasks without needing to discuss them. Hae-won gathered materials. Kyung-soo constructed the frame. Tae-sung organized the defensive angles. Night fell. The temperature dropped further. The humans activated small heating elements in their clothing and settled into their shelter. They rotated watch duty throughout the night. 2-hour shifts. Hae-won took the first watch, sitting alert and observant while others rested. Velk did not sleep. His species did not require daily rest cycles, but he also did not need to remain active for extended periods. He observed the humans, noting how they managed their energy. They ate regularly, small amounts of high-calorie food. They drank water constantly. They shifted positions frequently to avoid stiffness. Private Kyung-soo offered Threx one of his energy bars during the night. "These are pretty good," he said. "Lots of calories for the size." Threx accepted it and examined the nutrition information. 800 calories in a bar the size of his smallest manipulator limb. He consumed it carefully. The taste was intense, sweet, and salty simultaneously. His system processed it slowly. "Too much?" Kyung-soo asked, noticing Threx's reaction. "Strong flavor," Threx managed. Kyung-soo laughed quietly. "Yeah, they pack a lot in there. Salt, sugar, protein, caffeine, everything you need to keep moving. Caffeine." Threx recognized that compound. It was a stimulant. On most worlds, it required medical authorization for use. Humans consumed it recreationally in their beverages. Now he learned they included it in their field rations. Dawn arrived with gray light and continuing rain. The humans rose after approximately 4 hours of sleep. They ate breakfast, packed their equipment, and prepared to move out. They showed no signs of the fatigue that Velk knew should be affecting them. 4 hours of sleep was insufficient for any species he knew. Humans can function on limited sleep for extended periods, Tae-sung explained when Velk asked. "We can push for several days before we need real rest. Adrenaline and training help a lot, several days, on limited sleep, while carrying heavy loads, through rough terrain, in bad weather." The second day proceeded much like the first. More marching, more checkpoints, more objectives. The humans maintained their pace. Their spirits remained high. They sang songs while they walked, traditional marching songs with rhythmic patterns that helped maintain cadence. By the afternoon of the second day, Threx could barely move. His legs trembled with each step. His breathing apparatus was overheating. His exoskeleton had developed stress cracks from the sustained abuse. Taesung noticed and called for an early stop. "We're making good time," he said. "We can afford a longer break." But Threx knew the truth. They were stopping for him. The humans could continue indefinitely. They were being held back by their alien squad members. Heywan sat beside him during the break. "You're doing great," she said encouragingly. "Better than I expected, honestly. Most species can't keep up with human endurance. It's not a weakness. It's just different biology." Different biology. She was trying to be kind, but the reality was clear. Humans were not just stronger or faster. They were built to outlast anything, to keep moving when every logical system said to stop, to push beyond reasonable limits through sheer stubborn will. They reached the final checkpoint as evening fell on the second day. The objective complete, they began the return march to base. The humans moved with renewed energy, knowing they were heading home. Threx forced himself to continue, refusing to be carried despite Kyungsu's offer. They arrived at base after dark. 48 hours of continuous operation with minimal rest. The humans were tired, dirty, and happy. They had completed their mission. They had pushed themselves and succeeded. The alien recruits were wrecked. Threx needed 2 full days in medical care. Nima's tank required repair. Velk had to undergo maintenance to fix stress damage to his structure. The humans headed to the showers, looking forward to their next training session. Week 8 brought classroom instruction. After weeks of physical training, the alien recruits felt relief at the prospect of sitting and learning without their bodies being pushed to breaking points. They settled into the lecture hall with something approaching relaxation. Then Instructor Minjai began his presentation on human military history, and their relief evaporated. The first holographic image showed a battlefield. Thousands of humans in primitive armor, holding basic weapons, arranged in organized formations. The date marker indicated this scene was over 2,000 years old. "This is the Battle of Kani," Minjai explained. "A tactical masterpiece from Earth's ancient history. Approximately 70,000 soldiers engaged. By day's end, 50,000 casualties. 50,000. In a single day, with primitive technology." Velk's crystalline structure vibrated with distress. The largest military engagement in Federation history involved 1,200 casualties over a 6-month campaign, and it was considered a devastating conflict that led to major treaty revisions. The presentation continued through human history. Wars over territory, resources, religion, ideology, pride. Conflicts that lasted years, decades, even centuries. The casualty numbers climbed into the millions. Entire cities destroyed. Civilian populations displaced. Soldiers fighting until no one remained standing. "The Great War," Minjai said, highlighting a conflict from approximately 110 years ago. Estimated 40 million casualties over 4 years. Followed 21 years later by an even larger conflict with estimated 85 million casualties. 85 million. Threx's translator must have malfunctioned. That number was impossible. That would require deliberate, organized killing on a scale that most species could not comprehend. Private Jiwoo raised her hand. "My great-grandfather fought in that second war. He received 3 medals for valor and was wounded twice. Lived to be 94. Tough old man." She said it with pride. Her ancestor had participated in a conflict that killed 85 million beings, and she honored his memory. The humans in the classroom nodded with respect and understanding. This was normal to them. Warfare was part of their cultural heritage. Minjai advanced to more recent conflicts, smaller in scale but demonstrating advancing technology and tactics. Humans had refined warfare into a science. They studied it, practiced it, honored those who excelled at it. They built monuments to their war dead. They told stories of battles and heroes. Military service is respected in most human cultures, Minjai continued. Those who defend others are considered honorable. We train extensively because we understand the cost of being unprepared. Nima's colors shifted to deep purple, indicating profound confusion. Through her telepathic abilities, she had been monitoring the emotional states of the humans in the room. They felt pride, respect, solemnity, determination, but not shame. Not horror at their violent history. They acknowledged the tragedy while honoring the sacrifice. How could a species be so comfortable with violence yet so amiable? The lecture moved to military psychology. Minjai explained concepts that the Federation had never needed to develop. Fighting spirit, the will to continue despite injuries, the bonds between soldiers that made them willing to risk their lives for each other, the mental conditioning that allowed humans to function in combat despite fear. Fear is normal, Minjai said. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's functioning despite fear. Human military training includes stress conditioning to help soldiers operate under extreme circumstances. He showed footage of training exercises. Humans advancing under simulated gunfire, operating while sleep-deprived, making decisions while under physical and mental pressure. They were deliberately exposing themselves to suffering to build tolerance for worse suffering later. Corporal Ye Jin, sitting in the back row, added her perspective. I served as a combat medic for 2 years before becoming an instructor. The training seems harsh, but it saves lives. When soldiers know they can push through pain and exhaustion, they don't give up when it matters. When it matters. Meaning during actual combat. During real warfare where real death was possible. These humans prepared for violence as a practical inevitability. The next segment of the lecture covered human recreational activities, and this somehow disturbed the aliens even more than the warfare discussion. Minjai showed images of humans engaging in extreme sports, jumping from aircraft thousands of meters high and falling through the air before deploying parachutes, climbing vertical rock faces without safety equipment, throwing themselves off bridges while connected only by elastic cords, swimming with predatory ocean creatures, running ultra-marathons across deserts. These are hobbies, Minjai explained. Activities humans do for fun, for challenge, for the experience. For fun. They risked death for entertainment. They sought out danger and called it recreation. Private Hyunwoo spoke up. I do rock climbing on weekends. It's great exercise, plus you get to see amazing views from the top. Really peaceful up there. Peaceful. Hanging from a cliff face by your fingers. Peaceful Velk was furiously updating his report. The Federation Council needed to understand what they were dealing with. Humans were not simply physically capable. They were psychologically adapted for conflict in ways that made other species' warrior castes look cautious. During the break, Taesung approached the alien recruits with concern evident in his expression. I know this is a lot to process, he said. Human history is violent. We don't hide from that. But we're also capable of great compassion, cooperation, and peace. We fight to protect, not to conquer. Fight to protect. The statement revealed the core paradox of humanity. They were pack-bonding predators, fiercely loyal to their group, willing to use violence in defense of those they cared about. They had evolved as social hunters who cooperated to bring down prey larger than themselves. Then they had turned those same instincts toward protecting their communities. The afternoon session covered military awards and honors. Minjai displayed various medals and decorations, explaining what each one represented. Most honored exceptional bravery in combat, actions where soldiers had risked their lives or continued fighting despite severe injuries. One medal, called the highest honor in this particular nation's military, was awarded primarily posthumously. It recognized soldiers who had died protecting others. Humans gave their greatest recognition to those who had sacrificed everything. My grandmother received this award, Private Dong Hyun said quietly, pointing to an image of a particular medal. She was a pilot. Her aircraft was damaged in combat, but she stayed with it long enough to guide it away from a populated area before ejecting. Didn't make it. The classroom fell silent for a moment. Then several humans placed their hands over their hearts in a gesture of respect. This was mourning combined with pride. They honored the death because it had meaning, because it had saved others. Threx felt something shifting in his understanding. Humans were dangerous, yes. Capable of tremendous violence, absolutely. But they were also capable of tremendous sacrifice. They would endure pain to protect others. They would face death rather than let harm come to those under their protection. This was their strength, not just their physical capabilities or their endurance. It was their willingness to suffer for a purpose they believed in. The final part of the lecture covered modern human military doctrine, combined arms tactics, force projection, humanitarian operations. The humans did not just prepare for war, they prepared for peacekeeping, disaster relief, rescue operations. Their military served multiple functions, and violence was merely one tool among many. The goal is never to fight, Minjai concluded. The goal is to be so prepared, so capable, that fighting becomes unnecessary. Peace through strength, deterrence through readiness. Peace through strength. On most Federation worlds, peace came through diplomacy, through mutual benefit, through logical cooperation. Humans achieved peace by being so formidable that conflict became unthinkable. As the lecture ended and the recruits filed out, Velk remained behind. His report was becoming less of a training assessment and more of a warning. The galaxy had admitted a species of predators who practiced warfare as a cultural tradition, who trained from youth to fight, who honored sacrifice and valued courage in the face of death, and they were friendly. That was perhaps the most disturbing part. They smiled, they helped, they showed patience. They were kind to those weaker than themselves. They formed bonds with aliens who barely met their physical standards. What did you do with a species like that? How did you integrate them into a federation built on peaceful cooperation? How did you ensure they never turned their considerable capabilities against others? Velk did not have answers. He only had data, observations, and a growing certainty that the galaxy had changed forever. Week 12 arrived with surprising speed. The final evaluation would determine successful completion of the basic training program. For the human recruits, this was standard. For the alien participants, this was the culmination of the most challenging experience of their lives. The evaluation consisted of 4 components spread across the final 3 days. First was the endurance march, 20 kilometers with full combat load. The route included hills, rough terrain, and obstacles. Completion time of under 4 hours was required for humans. The aliens were given adjusted standards, but they would still need to finish under their own power. Threx had changed significantly over 12 weeks. His body had adapted to Earth's gravity through sheer necessity. His respiratory efficiency had improved with supplemental oxygen and gradual conditioning. He could now complete a 5-kilometer run without stopping. His push-up count had reached 15. By his species standards, he had become exceptional. By human standards, he had achieved basic competency. The march began at dawn. Corporal Taesung led his squad, setting a pace that pushed without breaking. Haewon stayed close to Threx, offering encouragement. Kyungsu helped Nima's tank navigate difficult sections. The humans could have finished much faster alone, but they treated this as a team exercise. Everyone would cross the finish line together. "Come on, Threx," Haewon called as they approached a steep hill. "You've done harder than this. Remember the field exercise? This is nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to that." The field exercise that had nearly killed him was now the benchmark for difficulty. Threx pushed forward, his legs burning, his breathing apparatus working at maximum capacity. He crested the hill and continued down the other side. They completed the march in 3 hours and 47 minutes. The entire squad together. The human instructors recorded the time with satisfied expressions. Successful completion across all participants. The second evaluation was the obstacle course. The same course that had seemed impossible 12 weeks ago. Threx approached the first wall with determination. He could not scale it without assistance, that had not changed. But he could use the rope ladder efficiently now. He could navigate obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. Jiwoo ran the course in 6 minutes and 12 seconds, her best time yet. She celebrated with quiet satisfaction. Donghyun finished in 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Suman achieved 5 minutes and 53 seconds and immediately checked the record board to see how close she had come to the course record. The aliens completed it with assistance, using modified techniques and equipment. It was not about matching human performance. It was about demonstrating improvement, effort, and determination. They had all improved dramatically from their starting point. The third evaluation covered combat skills. Unarmed techniques, weapon handling, tactical decision-making. The aliens were tested on theory more than practical application. They understood the concepts even if their bodies could not execute them at human levels. Threx demonstrated proper defensive posture and basic hand techniques. Felk explained tactical principles and situational awareness. Nima, despite her complete inability to engage in physical combat, showed understanding of squad coordination and communication protocols. The final evaluation was academic. Strategy, history, leadership principles, military law, and ethics. This was where the aliens could compete on more equal footing. Threx scored exceptionally well on tactical analysis. His species' long military tradition provided strong foundational knowledge that translated well to the human framework. On the final evening before graduation, the recruits gathered informally in the barracks common area. The formal hierarchy relaxed slightly. Instructors mingled with recruits. Human and alien participants shared stories and reflections. Private Hyunwoo sat with Threx, discussing their respective military traditions. Your species has been doing organized warfare for way longer than humans, Hyunwoo said. We're basically newcomers compared to your history. What was your impression of our training? Threx considered how to answer honestly. Intense, he said finally. Your physical standards are extraordinary. But more than that, your mindset is different. You embrace hardship as education. You push yourselves to limits that most species would consider dangerous. It's just normal for us, Hyunwoo replied with a shrug. We don't think about it much. This is just how we train. How else would you prepare soldiers? How else, indeed? Most Federation species prepared soldiers through simulation, tactical study, and weapon proficiency. Physical conditioning existed, but nothing like what humans required. The idea that warfare might involve sustained physical exertion, pain tolerance, and continuing to fight while injured was foreign to most military doctrines. Sergeant Bora joined the conversation. You all did well, she said to Threx, better than we expected, honestly. When the program started, we weren't sure how to adjust our training for different species, but you adapted. You pushed through. That's what matters. The humans made it possible, Threx admitted. Your patience, your assistance. Without that, I would have failed. That's what squad mates do, Bora replied. We support each other. No one succeeds alone. Graduation ceremony occurred the following morning. Commander Sang-woo presided over the formal event. All recruits stood in formation, human and alien together. Families attended, proud parents and siblings watching their loved ones receive recognition for completing basic training. Sang-woo's speech covered the values of military service: duty, honor, sacrifice, cooperation. He acknowledged the unique nature of this training class, the first to include alien participants. He praised both the human recruits for their patience and the alien recruits for their perseverance. You have all demonstrated the qualities we value, Sang-woo said. Not just skill or strength, but determination and character. You have learned from each other, supported each other, and succeeded together. This is what the Galactic Federation represents. Different species, different capabilities, united in common purpose. Each recruit received their completion certificate. When Threx's name was called, the entire assembly applauded. He approached the stage on legs that had carried him through 12 weeks of impossible challenges. He accepted the certificate with pride. The ceremony concluded with traditional military music. The recruits stood at attention as the national anthem played, then dispersed to celebrate with family and friends. Observer Velk watched the celebration from a distance. His final report was complete, thousands of pages of observations, measurements, and analysis. The conclusion was clear and troubling. Humans were not junior partners in the Federation. They were apex predators with technology, organization, and a cultural framework that made warfare a refined art. His report included recommendations: continue the exchange program but adjust expectations. Recognize that human military capabilities exceeded most Federation species by substantial margins. Develop protocols for integrating human forces into joint operations. Most importantly, ensure that humans remained aligned with Federation principles and never had reason to turn their considerable abilities against other member species. 3 months after graduation, the recommendations proved prophetic. A pirate fleet attacked a Federation colony in the Outer Territories. The nearest response force included the Earth contingent, recently graduated and assigned to their first deployment. The human soldiers arrived with efficiency that surprised the pirates. Sergeant Bora led her platoon in a coordinated assault that cleared the pirates from the colony in under 2 hours. The pirates, who had expected minimal resistance from Federation forces, found themselves facing beings who moved with predator speed, coordinated with practiced precision, and showed no hesitation in combat. The pirates surrendered quickly. Facing humans was not worth whatever they had hoped to steal. The colony administrator sent a grateful message to Federation Command. The human soldiers were professional, efficient, and surprisingly kind to the colonists. They secured the area, provided medical assistance, and helped with reconstruction. We expected military support. We received protectors. Protectors. The word spread through Federation channels. Humans were not conquerors. They were guardians. Dangerous when necessary, gentle when possible. Threx, now serving as a liaison officer, watched a recording of the operation. He recognized Haewon and Kyungsoo in the footage. They moved through hostile territory with the same casual competence they had shown during training exercises. This was easy for them. This was what they had been built for. He thought about the obstacle course, the morning runs, the field exercises. The humans had not been showing off. They had not been trying to intimidate anyone. They were simply being themselves, training to their natural standards, preparing for a reality that their evolution had made necessary. The galaxy had welcomed Deathworlders into the Federation, beings who evolved under conditions that would kill most species, who had spent millions of years becoming unkillable, then spent thousands more years practicing warfare against each other, and the humans were happy to help. They would protect those weaker than themselves. They would fight to defend others. They would show patience and kindness while being capable of tremendous violence. The galaxy was safer for having them.